This edition of Mac Voices could have been sponsored by you. Mac Voices is always looking for sponsors who appreciate our high-signal, low-noise approach to tech topics with an Apple focus. Our sponsorship packages feature inclusion in all of the audio and video versions of Mac Voices at all of their distribution points, a web presence, inclusion in the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and more. Get the details by contacting me at chuck@macvoices.com or contact Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Welcome to Mac Notables on Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, the Mac Notables are back in action. This time we have Ms. Tonya Engst of Tidbits and Take Control to talk about whatever it is we're going to talk about. Tonya, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well.
It's great. Now, you are one of two people in this conversation that is wearing a shirt based on a screensaver, and it's not me, so it's got to be you. Tell me about your T-shirt. This is really intriguing.
Well, that's right. I was mentioning before the show started that to get ready for the show, I put on a shirt that is a screensaver. And Chuck was like, what? So I'm just going to stand up really tall here so everyone can see the shirt a little more. So this shirt was a Christmas present for my husband a couple of years back, and it's based on a screensaver project on the internet called Electric Sheep, which is Googleable. And I don't believe they're selling any T-shirts at the moment, but you can actually hook up to it and get algorithmically generated really beautiful screenshots, or screensavers rather. So I just thought it was kind of fun to wear the shirt today.
Yeah, it's a great looking shirt. I would never have associated it though with a screensaver. Now, if you'd had flying toasters, maybe.
That's true. So way back in the day of the flying toasters, there was a screensaver called, oh my goodness, it was spelled M-O-I-R-E, and I think it had an umlaut over that O, so who knows how you say it, Moire or something.
Yeah, I think so.
And that used to run on the Mac Plus in the office where I worked at Cornell as a supervisor of the various computer rooms. And I would sometimes find myself sitting there late at night just staring at the thing. But this looks a lot like that, except it's in color. Just sort of hypnotizing, kind of draws you in, all these psychedelic shapes. Yeah.
Okay, well, sorry, but it's such a unique thing. When you brought it up, I had to make sure that we shared it with everyone.
That's right. Next time I'll bring my flying toaster's mouse pad to Mac Voices if I can find it.
Ooh, wow. Boy, that goes back.
Yes, it
goes
does.
Way back. I don't think, no, never mind. I'm not going to go there. Not going to go there. So, Tonya, we're headed toward macOS Sierra. That much is pretty clear. I've even lost track of how many betas are out there. And Apple's doing things a little bit differently now, where there are so many of these betas. I personally I don't install betas unless I have a machine handy that I'm not dependent on, and I seem to have fewer and fewer of those right now. But I'm curious as to how you all are getting ready for Sierra. Have you been running a lot of the betas, and how are you doing it for both Tidbits and Take Control?
Well, the good news here is we have a variety of personalities. So we have some people who are, I don't know, kind of more cowboyish, and they've already installed iOS 10, Sierra, watchOS. I don't know if you can install anything new with the Apple TV, but if you can, they have. They've just gone in whole hog, dived in, and honestly, it seems to be working well enough for them. Nobody is actually having a problem where, they can't get their work done or they can't use their iPhone when they need it to communicate. So that's the good news. Other people are more conservative, and some people even now are like, no, I couldn't possibly install it. Don't even approach me. But the authors who are actually writing books about these new things have started. They've installed it. They're getting by just okay, just fine. I myself will be installing Sierra tomorrow. As you, Chuck, knows, and probably some listeners know, we've been doing a book called Take Control of Upgrading to whatever it is, panther, tiger, leopard, snow leopard, lion, mountain lion, etc., since 2003. So Joe Kissel and I, Joe's the author, have this little tradition that we do this book together. And so this year we're doing Upgrading to Sierra, and I always wait to install Sierra until I have the draft from Joe. And then I do it really reading his book, doing exactly what he says, and seeing what happens with kind of as new eyes as I can muster. I mean, they're not that new just because I've done it so many times. But yeah, so tomorrow is my big day. I expect Joe will meet his deadline because he almost always does. And I have not decided. Normally, when I install it, I'm super careful about a whole lot of backups and what drive it's on and whatnot, so I can switch back and forth between Sierra and well, in this case, it'll be Sierra and El Capitan. But I suppose I should be really careful about it this time, just in case of a problem or in case I need to check something. But I'm kind of feeling like it would be okay if I just kind of installed it and moved on. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to not just reading about the features and hearing about them, but trying them out firsthand. Definitely the first thing I'm going to try is Siri.
That's I think an obvious first choice and an interesting first choice. So let's step back from that just a second, or go off to the side a little. Do you use Siri a lot on your iOS devices?
I use Siri a lot on my watch, and to some extent on my iOS, on my iPhones and whatnot. But I think it's going to be so great on the Mac. Instead of, calling up Launch Bar and typing, SP to get system preferences, which also could be what I might want to type to get Spotify, so it's kind of annoying, or working with a dock. I think it's going to be so great to invoke Siri and just say, open Spotify, open system preferences, open text edit, whatever it is, just use my voice. I think it's going to be just more fluid and more fun. And there's like 700 other things that you can do with Siri and Mac. And I'm just like, I want to open apps.
Well, that's okay. And I guess it's going to bring up, I think, an interesting question. Now, folks that watch MacVoices know that you have your office. Adam has his that's full of penguins. And the two of you really have your separate workspaces. And in your case, they're separate rooms. But for some of us that work in office environments, that could present a little problem if we're talking to our Macs a whole lot. You think we're gonna...
Definitely. It'll depend on the office. I do know that there is a sidebar in our upcoming book about Sierra about how to do kind of a custom Hey Siri for your Mac. So you could have it be Hey whatever you want, like, Hey Joe, or Hey Chuck, or Hey my commandable Macintosh. Anyway, Shali's got a tip in there about how to set that up. So if you needed to speak it, have it be more custom to your Mac, that might work for some people. But, in a case like that, you're probably going to be annoying your coworkers a great deal if you're talking to your Mac. So
yeah, well, there are some people that talk to their computers frequently and not always in nice terms.
That's true.
But it's the whole Star Trek sci-fi thing, that we see people talking to the computers, and then in the real world you implement it, and it can be strange. It can be maybe annoying. I mean, I know there are plenty of times that I want to use Siri, and so I end up doing one of these to the watch, because I don't necessarily want to just hit the button on my iPhone and speak normally in that environment. So you try to do it here, and then you say, okay, well, how goofy do I look? But, I'm not sure I care that I look goofy, because it's useful.
No, you don't look goofy. You look like a hip and happening geek.
Is it? That may be the first time that those words have ever been strung together, Tonya. A hip and happening geek. Okay.
I tend to go through stages, sort of phases with Siri, where I'll have 3 or 4 things that I do with her really often. And those things get more and more fluid, and she understands me better and better. And they really just get wired into how I conduct my day. And then, something changes about my life circumstances, and I don't need to use that Siri command as often. It sort of unwires, and I sort of, forget it or whatever. But then I move on to some other things. I do find it really useful, especially right now for making reminders. I'm not sure I can keep my head on straight without it, because once the reminder is in my computer, then it shows up when I'm making my plans for my to-do lists. But when you think of something at 9 at night, when you're not even at your desk, making a reminder is just a perfect way to get it there later. So that's my big thing right now. But I said there's like 700 things you can do with Siri. So
I'm a little surprised to hear you. I don't mean to imply that it's a cavalier thing, but you all rely heavily on a certain set of programs to publish your books as well as the newsletter, and so just jumping in, head first surprises me. Now I know for
I should clarify.
Okay, please.
I'm sorry, I was not clear. I have 2 computers. So my laptop is always the guinea pig machine. Who knows what might be happening on it. It's not to be depended on. Although whenever I need to take notes at a meeting, I do hope that my laptop will work at least well enough for note taking. But the poor thing just gets abused all the time with things being installed onto it. So the laptop always has the latest. And then I have this very fabulous desktop machine with, the external monitor and all kinds of stuff. And it's always a full operating system behind.
Okay.
So right now I'm actually running on Yosemite on my main machine. So, and the laptop right now today has El Capitan on it. And then tomorrow, big change every day, the laptop will acquire Sierra. And actually, I won't immediately move my desktop machine to El Capitan because it is a terrible time to change anything on my desktop machine because there's so many books that we need to put out right now. But probably in November or December when things settle down, I'll upgrade my desktop machine to El Capitan. So that's just, I've been doing that for like 5 years now. And if you actually have software that tends to be a little cranky or anything that like you don't have time to refactor on if it doesn't work great, you really don't want to run any beta. I mean, you don't want to change anything at all because if it's working now, you just want to keep it working, right? I mean, you don't want to end up not being able to have a weekend because you installed something and now everything's gone wrong. So so I should clarify that. I've always one test Mac, one production Mac.
Yeah, I know that some of the early things I saw were warnings to video editors that a lot of the third-party stuff right now breaks. And so you want to be very careful. So folks, we'll be talking about this going forward. But as always, first of all, I think Tonya's got a great idea, separate machine completely if at all possible. But if not, make sure you have a backup and then a second backup in case you do need to revert. Or who knows, maybe you want to install Sierra on a clone of your existing drive or your existing hard drive, and then boot from that and check out all your mission critical stuff and see, your performance won't be great, but you'll be able to find out whether it breaks anything or not that you absolutely have to have.
Right. And honestly, for someone who is running more third-party apps or is using their Mac for something that goes beyond just like home consumer use, the time to install Sierra is probably, like December or February, and, proceed with due caution for sure. Nothing's really changed there just because it's gotten so much easier for Apple to roll out betas, and because the betas are now very commonly accessible and very commonly discussed, it doesn't really mean that you personally need to install them. I think the difference is for larger organizations, which do have custom needs, they can now get at the betas, test them, and give Apple feedback if there's an important problem. And so that's something to think about if you're at that level.
Unless, of course, you're a hip and happening geek, and then you want to...
just install it and deal with the consequences later.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got like 17 backups anyway if you're a hip and happening geek, right?
I don't title shows, Tonya, but I think we have a show title. I'm not sure. I'm also curious about your reaction to all the rumors that we're seeing that are flapping around. There are two things that seem to be going on right now. There are a lot of rumors about the iPhone 7, whatever it's going to be named, the next iPhone, we'll say it that way, that seems to be impending. And then there's just so much speculation over the Mac Pro as to what should be done. Is it coming? Is it going? Is it going to be upgraded? Is it going to be retired? I dislike rumors so much because they set expectations that are completely unrealistic, and then you wonder why the stock drops. But
So I am not a hip and happening enough geek to really pay a lot of attention to the rumors. Um, I I feel like it's like sort of living in an alternate future and putting time and attention to something that might happen in the future, but it might not. And I feel like it's hard enough to keep track of everything that is going on right now and all the specs and facts about the things that are actually available, that I sort of try to not get a lot of the rumor information into my head, because I don't want to get confused about it later if it didn't even happen. So I think if you're actively, buying an iPhone right now or thinking about a new desktop machine, sure, it's great to check out the rumors because it might make you wait and not buy something until later because you might be waiting for the next thing. But otherwise, I don't really see the attraction beyond sort of a casual interest, because there's so much happening right now. And I guess when I finish thinking about what's happening right now, I kind of get away from my office and go do other things. So I think it's like too much navel gazing.
You bring up a great point that there is a certain value to some of the rumors, I guess, if you are on the cusp of buying something and there might be a major change coming in something that is important to you.
Like I wouldn't buy an Apple Watch right this week because historically Apple makes announcements in early September, like new iPhones, maybe an iPhone 7. I mean, that seems likely. There'll be some iPhone 7, but they might announce a new watch. They might. And if they do, the new watch might have, say, a GPS chip in it. And you might want to wait and get that watch instead of the watch that's available this week. So I mean, it is worth paying attention sort of broadly. But I think people get a little over obsessive about very tiny details.
Well, and the leaked photos and all, I think there's, you can't not, I mean, I admire you if you've been able to avoid them, because sometimes it's just unavoidable.
I don't know. I've got a job. It's summer. I like to go cycling and go running with my friends. I've got a kid. I've got a garden. I mean, there's a limit. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So this is the way you avoid it.
Okay. So I'm the balanced geek.
The balanced geek.
Yes.
Wow. All kind of new terms.
I mean, would you rather think about a Mac that might ship in 3 months or it might not? Or would you rather go eat fresh tomatoes and corn?
Okay, good point. Well, that's our show for today, folks. I got to go find
Sorry, I got nothing.
fresh tomatoes and corn. You make a good point. That may take us into something new and interesting, and that is and the balanced geek. And I'm being dead serious now, because you all are surrounded by technology, and yet you and Adam both seem to be well grounded in the non-tech stuff as well. How do you accomplish this?
Sheer bloody mindedness. I think that several years ago, Adam and I would often complain about how we used to have to write about just one Apple operating system, but now there's two. macOS, as we're calling it now, and iOS. And then we sort of started noticing that there was Apple TVs. That's kind of 3 Apple operating systems to keep track of. And now, of course, we've got now we've got the watch, so we've got 4. And so for a while, we sort of whined about how we had to take control of 4 operating systems a year, but we kind of stopped. I think that somehow we just found a way to just kind of surf a little closer to the surface, not to quite go so deep, and to be comfortable with the rate of change. And I think part of that comfort is just that we've gotten better at it. Adam and I have, I think a lot of people have. But I think also Apple has gotten better in the past year. Some of their interface decisions have been better. Things are starting to be a little bit more logical. So it feels more like you're learning within a logical universe instead of kind of random interface elements being thrown all over the place. And I think that the integration between the four operating systems, some aspects of it are starting to make sense or starting to be more useful. So, for example, another feature I'm looking forward to in Sierra is being able to unlock my user account with my watch. I think that's totally hot feature. Also, the universal clipboard, where you'll be able to share the contents of your clipboard between your Apple devices. Really great feature. So we're starting to, I don't know, sort of see Apple put it together, and that helps us put it together in our own heads. We can have a conceptual map that is more logical. And I think that helps us just be able to not obsess about it so much, so that at the end of the day, we can put it aside and go do other things. I think for Adam and I, we're in our late 40s, and I think we've just gotten to the point in our lives where, this is how it is. And if we don't like something about it, there's no like, oh, it'll when I'm finally grown up, I'll make it better. Like, we're as grown up as I think we're going to be. So if something isn't right, we should make it better. And I think part of that for us has been a lot of focus on just that kind of quality of life balance. I've been working, we work pretty long days, a lot of days, but just sort of learning how to have that switch in your head where you just really turn it off.
And I admire that a lot, because I know I'm not always the best at that. I start to work on a project and I can't let it go.
Yeah. Well, and it's good and it's bad. You cannot be on for 3 years straight without like losing your mind. But when you are on, when you can't let go of your project, when it obsesses you day and night, you do your best work. I think when you're not exhausted from it. And so sometimes, like going into this whole, when I said, oh, I'm going to start editing Joe's upgrading book tomorrow, I'm probably starting tomorrow, not going to really turn it off very much until mid-October. But I have gotten to the point where when I like take a half a weekend day during that period of time and I go out on my bicycle or I do something fun with friends, I will be able to turn it off for those few hours. There was a period of like 8 or 9 years when it just didn't get turned off. That's not really healthy. So I think it's a kind of a, just as you get older, some things do get easier.
So you just recognize that you do better work when you do turn it off for a little while? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, I think A, recognize that, but B, I've also found things I really love to do that are not Mac stuff. So like I really love to go outside and go cycling or running with my friends. Like I just love that. So it's worth setting up my life so that can happen. And I think maybe 15 years ago, I didn't have as many great hobbies. So
it's interesting. We hear so much about work-life balance, and I think there's some of us and I can be one of those that scoff at it a little bit, because I'm very fortunate that I love what I do for a living. I love this, talking to you and talking to all the folks we talk to on MacVoices. And so when you like it all or love it all,
if you love it, it's hard to say no to it.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I think some of it for me also has been, as I said, getting into the late 40s. You just can't really sit at a desk for 12 hours a day every day. I mean, you'll break. So some of that has been forced by physical reality.
That's a really good point too. We're all over the place here, but with the Apple Watch, I think yes. I personally have realized a while back when I first got it I didn't realize I was as sedentary as I was. I knew I was sedentary, but I don't think I realized how much. And that really woke me up and said, okay, you gotta be moving a little bit more. You got to get up. You got to pay attention to some of this stuff. And you do. You start to feel better. There's no question about it. And I don't think that's an age thing. I could be wrong, but I think that's at every age. It may be, maybe at some ages you benefit more from it, because you just naturally are a little more sedentary because you've acquired all those responsibilities that you do as you get older and more responsible.
Yes.
So any other life advice, Tonya? You're on a roll here.
Life advice.
Yeah, this is impressive.
Well, I think that as a balanced geek, or a hyper geek.
Hyper geek now.
Well, hyper geeks wouldn't do this. To achieve a balanced geekery, I think it is important to come to terms with the fact that the tech industry is just always going to be changing. I think in the lifetimes of anybody listening to this podcast, every change is the only thing that's constant. And I think it is really challenging for people. They finally learn their iPad as well as they want to learn it, or they get their Mac working the way they want it, and then what happens? New operating systems, new stuff, or even a bigger challenge. Someone in their family decides they're not a Mac user. They're going to be a Chrome user, or they're a Windows user. And then there's not only this whole other element over, on the side, but you have to communicate with that person. And so I think just opening up the mindset to be interested in trying new things and to be hopeful, even in the light of some contradictory evidence, that new things are by and large going to be good, is really important. Otherwise, you get stuck using old equipment that increasingly doesn't work, or increasingly won't back up your stuff right, or increasingly won't work with other stuff. And it seems like you will increasingly get grumpy and sad about it. And it's really the grumpy and sad. If it was just like, you're happy about it, it's fine, and you're a little behind, that's one thing. But it seems like it tends to go with people feeling badly. Technology's stupid, this stupid, that stupid, I can't believe how stupid everything is. And I think that that's unfortunate, and you'd be happier if, even if you can't afford to upgrade, or you don't want to take the time, if you just sort of have a jollier outlook about it.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I also am very serious about this. We've seen that with user groups, where user groups are graying. There's no question about it. And you find people that are less interested in doing the cool new stuff, whatever the cool new stuff is.
Because it's new, and it's like, and I think it's very human. You just want to understand something and get to have it for a while, but it doesn't work that way with the tech. But
at some point, I think I also kept running into something at our group when they said, "But why?" It was almost like, the problem with the little kid. Now you got the people who are saying, I've been doing this for years. Why do I need to do this? Why would I want to do this? And I think there was a time that those people were just like, yeah, this is a new thing and I want to try it. And,
right, like exploring.
Yeah, and now they just want to do what they want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it also, you have to recognize that you're freezing yourself in time, and that's okay. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Right, but somehow it seems like people are unhappy about it a lot of the time.
Yes,
and it's like half of them wants to stay with what they have and what they understand and what's working, but they sort of, I don't know. There just seems like there's such a lot of grumpiness around it.
Yeah, and
sooner or later things start breaking. Like, I have a girlfriend who's incredibly grumpy about technology, and she was running, I can't even remember the details well enough to really fill them in, but she was running an iPad with a very old version of iOS, and she somehow got her files backed up to iCloud, but her Mac was somehow too old to access them, and she basically could only back up her files to iCloud, but she could never restore her files from iCloud. I can't even I
Wow.
can't even remember what bizarre scenario led to this, but it was just because she never upgraded a thing. And then she suddenly realized that like a decade of writing was on this iPad and in this sort of mysterious, probably there iCloud backup and nowhere else.
Oh,
And then she kind of freaked out because it was like, hours and hours, like a great deal of writing that she had done.
that's a little terrifying.
So, and I was like, oh, well, it's no problem. It's an iCloud, but she had no means of getting to it. That's how old it was. Sort of difficult to explain. As I said, I can't even think of the plausible reason why, but this did occur.
Yeah. Oh, I don't doubt it. I mean, it's one of the challenges. I think there's so many mixtures of so many different versions of the software and the hardware out there that there are going to be unexpected things that happen and scenarios that were almost impossible to predict, if not impossible to predict. But it goes right back to the same thing that okay, you're going to be chasing this. There's no question about it. But you chase fashion and you chase car styles and you chase a lot of things because they evolve. And and especially for something like that, if she was doing all that writing and wasn't paying attention or wasn't keeping up, or at least making provisions of some kind to be aware of it, it just goes to show you we think of the technology as getting so easy and so much better, and you realize just how far it still has to go to avoid having people have problems like that.
Well, exactly. And if it had just stayed frozen with the version of iOS that she was running, I think it would have all worked out. And, to be perfectly fair, she's a working mom. She's got 2 kids. She's got stuff going on in her life. And it probably wasn't very reasonable for her to spend very much time on staying up to date. But if she had just spent, like a little bit of time, might have gone better for her.
And the reality,
it was more that she was so grumpy about it. She spent 3 times as much time being grumpy about it as they would have taken to just update.
Yeah. And it's, unfortunately, that's the world we live in now, that you have to do the updates, not because Apple says you do, but because now we have security concerns that we've never had before. And they seem to be it seems to be coming every day more and more intense, that people are potentially hacking. They're potentially getting access to things you would prefer they don't have access to, that can be problematic at best and tragic at worst. So, and Apple is the platform I think that you can feel the most secure on and safe, but you got to meet them halfway by doing the upgrades and doing the backups. You just have to.
And Apple's trying to make that easier. The updates are more and more, automatic if you'll let them be automatic. Now, I've been running into a situation with some of my very old Kindles. Some of the original Kindles used, what was it? It's not even the cellular network. They used some wacky network that just kind of
I know what you mean.
Out there in the air. And you didn't really do very much with the network because really all you were doing was downloading, the books, and the books were basically text files. So it's not like you're downloading video or something, but they've been doing some forced updates of these things where they're saying basically, they're sending me email and saying, you got to charge up your Kindle and, get it connected to the internet. It's not the internet, whatever it is that you connect it to get your update, because if you don't do it in like 10 days, we're going to cut you off. You won't be able to get any more updates. Oh my gosh, I can't have that happen to my very old Kindle. And because I publish ebooks, I do have a number of old Kindles around, and I don't really much use them. But I like to read books on them every now and again, and they're kind of my old friends. So I have to run around the house and okay, where's the charger cable for this one, and in our house to get them to connect to whatever this ancient wireless network is. You have to put them outside on the southwest corner of the house, or put them under this particular window. So the first time this happened, we got all the Kindles updated, and I was happy. And then actually, honestly, I think I got another email about it about a month ago, and I just thought, I was too busy. I didn't do anything, so they may not work very well.
Okay, last topic. This has been really interesting because we just go from one to the other, but the whole obsolescence thing.
Yes.
I guess we're right back to it, Tonya. Because I see people upset that, well, recently, iFi. I don't know if you're familiar with it, the little Wi-Fi cards that you can plug into pretty much any camera to give it Wi-Fi capabilities. They announced that they were basically end-of-lifing some stuff, and there's this huge furor and they backed off of it and said, okay, we're going to do one more update. But at some point, it's old tech, and you can't expect these companies to keep things running any more than you can expect, say, Ford to keep a 1962, if there is such a thing, Mustang. I'm not a car guy. They can't stock parts. You're going to have to go to third-party parts or something else. And if you're a car guy, you know where to go get them, and you're going to pay a premium for them, but it's important to you. But to expect the companies to continue to maintain this backward compatibility when those machines were built to do things to do a small percentage of what we want to do with our machines now, it's not fair and it's not realistic.
Well, I mean, I think this is one of those things where more than one thing can be a valid opinion at the same time. So I think you do have a valid opinion. But I think that businesses ultimately have to stay in business. They do need to be profitable and make a certain amount of money. But I also think that it is a darn shame that we keep obsolescing things that maybe we could keep around for a while longer. And that's because we effectively end up throwing them out. And just from a sustainability standpoint and an environmental standpoint, that's not great. I mean, Adam and I have gotten to the point where we hardly ever buy cases or docks or any little accessory doodads like that for things, because we know what's going to happen in 2 or 3 years. It's going to be trash. It's just going to be trash. And that's not fun anymore. We've thrown out too much stuff already in our lifetimes. And I think it's not so much that technology companies shouldn't be making new things, but that they should be thinking increasingly about, the whole product cycle. So what does the consumer do when they're done with this thing? So like I did break down and get a case for my iPhone 6S. It's just a little piece of, I don't know what it is, plastic, rubber, something. The white Apple sticker I put on it just to make it prettier. But what's going to happen when this phone is obsoleted is this is going to be trash. Unless Apple were to stick with the same form factor about forever, or someone figures out how to make recyclable, plasticky, rubbery iPhone cases. And I do think it's something that we need to address as a society. And I know some people are working on it, and I think they should keep on working on it. But I think that's probably not why people were complaining. I think they were complaining because they already had a bunch of the cards and they didn't want to get new ones, or they didn't want to replace equipment that only used the old cards. And that's also partly a sustainability thing, but it's also partly just there's only so much people can deal with. And if the pace of change is too fast, then everyone just gets, grumpy. But sometimes you're grumpy for a good reason.
Well, and as I recall, I think there were some network issues as to what they could continue to do with those cards, and they either found a way around it or decided to commit the resources to make them work. But I don't know.
When this happens almost all the time, people complain, and then someone comes out with a little adapter thingy that you can buy and plug in. Of course, you'll have to throw that out too in 3 or 4 years because it'll be completely useless. But usually there's some third-party workaround eventually. Yeah.
I guess maybe I've just become accustomed to the idea that tech is going to be obsolete or out of date. There are people around that they're still running. Heck, there's still people that are running Apple IIs, and they're for good reasons. I think there are people running certain scanners and certain other systems that the software was written for it. That's all it was ever written for, and so great. I mean, that's a prime example of a piece of tech that is fulfilling its purpose It never needed to do anything better. If you go back and get a 5-year-old iMac and install the native operating system at that point, I guarantee you it's going to run like a champ. And if
so long as the software, just on the software that, you might have trouble finding new software to put onto it.
Exactly. And so if that's all you ever need to do with it, then fine. Then just freeze it there, keep it there. Hopefully you won't have security or internet concerns, and that's a whole different category for the discussion. But at the end of the day, this is where you are, and if that's it, then that's fine. But you're
so
not.
Long as it doesn't make you grumpy, and you don't make everybody else grumpy.
Amen.
No spreading of grumpiness.
Amen. You don't have to have Facebook. You don't have to have Snapchat. You don't have to have Instagram. But if you want to play in those areas, you got to have something a bit more current. It's just fact of life. I don't know if we solved anything, Tonya, but this was a great discussion of a lot of things.
Yeah, I think so many things these days, like I said, there's more than one opinion that's completely valid and sort of interesting to look at all the different facets of something and see what of value might be learnable by considering them all together.
You're very wise.
It's just the shirt.
Well, let's see. We coined the hip and happening geek.
Yes.
The hyper geek. What was the other one?
The balanced geek.
The balanced geek. Yes. So we have 3 new types of geeks out there. So which one are you folks? Let us know. Are you hip and happening? Are you balanced? Or are you hyper?
Or grumpy. The grumpy geek.
The grumpy geek. 4. Okay. We have 4 new kinds of geeks, and we hope that you're not grumpy. Tonya, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for the time and for the laughs. This was fun.
This was fun. Thank you for having me.
Yep, we'll do it again. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Notables on MacVoices. We'll be back with a whole lot more. We hope you're not grumpy. We hope you are hip and happening, I think, and balanced. Maybe you can be both.
I think you can be both.
I hope so. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit macvoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com, bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.